Training is not education. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Return on investment is an effective way to measure training. It's a terrible way to measure education. The Wall Street Journal made 3 attempts recently to do this. The first article is titled, "Is College Worth the Cost?" The second is titled, "How much MBA debt should students take on?" And the third article says, "Should USC push a $115,000 online degree?" Well, the short answers are yes, as little as possible, and no. Let's unpack. Is college worth the cost? Well, that depends, answers the Wall Street Journal. The problem is they're trying to measure the unmeasurable. A friend visited our home this week, whom I met as a freshman in college in the fall of 1973. Now, what's a 48-year friendship worth? You see, college is more than a diploma that's used as a bludgeon to beat society over the head until it gives you the economic returns that you want. College is where we gain an understanding of our world. Now, that understanding is not always rewarded in dollars. What and why are different questions. See, I have participated in both education and training in my teaching career. For many years, I worked for the AICPA. I'd leave my DBU classroom and rush to the airport. The next day, I would lead a seminar for the Certified Public Accountants, because AICPA stands for the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Also, with my consulting partner, David Deviney, I've produced this nice collection of half-day management seminars. That's training, which can and should be measured in ROI, because the definition of training is teaching a skill or behavior. It answers the what question. Education is defined as an enlightening experience, because it answers the why question. How about this? The unexamined life is not worth living, or I like to state it, an unlived life is not worth examining. Get the difference? Work is good. In our book, Biblical Economic Policy, Sergei Seidamatov and I claim we have found 10 biblical commandments of economics. The one that applies here is called Work is Good. We believe God worked in the very first verse of Genesis, and He wants us to work. I explain that in more detail in my podcast number 24, titled Work is Good. I warn my students against getting on their high horse about being educated and comparing themselves to those who did not earn a college degree but instead had training. Well, maybe that's because my dad owned a one-man fuel delivery business and encouraged his 5 kids to attend Christian liberal arts colleges. He made a wonderful contribution to his community, as HVAC technicians and plumbers also do. See, Christians believe that all work is God's work, with, of course, a few notable exceptions for things like prostitution and pornography. An audience of one. See, this idea of training to answer the what questions and education to answer the why questions is answered for our students at Dallas Baptist University every time they attend a volleyball or basketball game at the Berg Center on our campus. The what is clearly exemplified in the practice and training they do as a team every day. The why is answered by this sign that is posted above the entry to the gym. It's taken from a chapter title in a book titled The Call by Os Guinness. If you can't remember how to spell his name, open your refrigerator. Sorry, economics is not a very funny discipline, so I couldn't resist the quip. Okay, back to Guinness. In this chapter that I'm talking about, he tells the very sad story of Margaret Carnegie, mother of robber baron Andrew Carnegie. Her life goal was to return to their small town of Dunfermline, Scotland, and ride in a coach pulled by fine horses to show the people of her village that she was rich. What a wasted life. In class, I explain that every good English teacher tells you to consider your audience when you're writing. I stand sideways to the class and I tell the students, if you do your homework and you earn good grades, in 2 years you'll walk across the stage and you will face DBU President Dr. Adam Wright as he presents your diploma to you. But the most important person is not Dr. Wright. It is that person out there in the audience whom you're trying to please. Who is that person? I ask my sophomores. In his book, The Call, Os Guinness says that person should be God. He should be our audience of one. So our basketball and volleyball players are encouraged not to play for their parents or their coach or even their teammates. They're encouraged to play in a way that would please God. Now you're gaining an understanding of why I reject the Wall Street Journal's assumption that you can measure the worth of a college degree in dollars. You can't. Back to our basketball players. You can measure their training by how many points they score and, by games they win. You can't measure how much they honor God by playing basketball. Don't confuse the what and the why questions. The summary of Os Guinness's book, The Call, is that we have two calls. The first is to be a Christian. The second is to do something to serve your neighbors. College education is more about who we be than what we do. Think about how silly the Wall Street Journal articles sound now as they try to use dollars to measure a person's being. When what I do becomes who I am. My first book was titled Corporate Cults, subtitled The Insidious Lure of the All-Consuming Organization. You may know that an author does not have total control over the title of a book. My chosen subtitle was When What I Do Becomes Who I Am. You see, I was writing about the same thing that Os Guinness writes about, being and doing. But being comes first. I was trying to warn people to not allow what I do to become who I am. Ginger and I have 5 grandsons. My hope is that someday they will say, Grandpa Arnott taught me how to be a Christian man. That would be fine. In another sense, I've had about 5,000 college students in my career. I hope someday they will say, Professor Arnott helped me understand my world. That's what we do in education. Help people understand their world. And we are a community of learners. My students regularly teach me how to use electronic communications. And an 18-year-old freshman gave me a great lesson on blockchain and cryptocurrencies over lunch last week. See, that learning will not be measured in dollars of revenue. Means versus ends. See, if you've been following my podcast, you've noticed there is a familiar theme that goes like this. Christians are more concerned about the means. Economists are more concerned about the ends. See, education is more about the means because it helps us determine what is good. Training is more about the ends because it measures what is completed or what gets done. Education cannot be measured in dollars. Training can. The liberal arts. From your reading of the New Testament, you'll remember that the Apostle Paul saved his skin a few times by explaining, I'm a Roman citizen. Okay, what's that mean? Well, this idea of letting the populace vote was attempted by the Greeks and furthered by the Romans. They didn't get nearly as far as we are today because slaves, nor women, nor many other categories could vote. But the Romans thought about this and they deduced, if we're going to let the common man vote, he needs to have a liberal education. See, in Latin, libera means free. It means the education necessary to allow men to be free enough to vote. That's education, not training. And it's not effectively measured in dollars of revenue as the Wall Street Journal is trying to do. Back to the Romans. There were 3 general categories of the liberal arts in the Roman education scheme. The first level was the trivium, which is just a big word for 3. It consisted of grammar, rhetoric, and logic. The free man must know how to use the language via grammar. Oh, back to my dad again. On the plains of South Dakota in the 1920s, he attended a grammar school and he had to study Latin. See, he was being educated to be a free man or a liberally educated man. Also, the Roman free person needed to know rhetoric or how to speak to persuade others. And perhaps the most interesting of the trivium was logic. Tempted to chase a rabbit on this one, but I'll reveal only one example and move on. This week, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg stated that $5 trillion in spending would lower inflation. Mr. Buttigieg would not be allowed to vote in the Roman era because he did not understand logic. The quadrivium was next. Just another big word for 4. It contained geometry, arithmetic, music, and astronomy, yeah. Only after understanding those subjects could the Roman citizen move to the higher subjects of philosophy and theology. Many Christian colleges have a liberal arts commitment. That's because we believe God wants us to understand our entire world, not just one small segment of it. Again, Don't ever degrade training. I often tell my students that their learning is different from others. It's not better, it's not worse. We could not have a modern world without auto mechanics and heavy machine operators who are trained in the what. The what can be measured in dollars of outcome. The Christian liberal arts outcomes, which teach the why, those cannot be measured in dollars, as the Wall Street Journal attempted this week. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.